There is a story many Iranians in exile carry like a long-inherited heirloom, polished, repeated, and fiercely protected, almost sacred. A story that says Iran was Persia, Persia was Iran, and somewhere along the way it was stolen from us by outsiders. It's a beautiful story. It smells of poetry, stone reliefs, and imagined continuity. But such beauty does not guarantee the truth. In the diaspora, identity often hardens. Whether in Los Angeles, London, Toronto, and beyond, countless Iranians carry a longing for Persia. Distance does that. When home becomes unreachable, memory steps in, and memory prefers a clear ideal over a complex reality. So Iran dissolves into Persia, and Persia becomes a singular, almost sacred essence, refined, ancient, superior, a civilization untouched by contradiction, a nation with one face. But Iran has never been a nation with one face. What many in the diaspora do not realize or choose not to confront is that this image of a homogenous Persian Iran is not ancient. It is modern. It was shaped deliberately in the early 20th century during an age obsessed with race, hierarchy, and mythic origins. Yet in exile, many Iranians cling to a version of identity that excludes this reality, partly out of pride, partly out of pain, and partly as a reaction against the Islamic Republic, using pre-Islamic antiquity as a refuge from the present. To understand why, let us travel back to the early 20th century when this new narrative was forged. Persia had long been the name by which the world, especially the West, referred to this land. It conjured images of Persepolis, Cyrus the Great, Ferdowsi's epic verses. In 1935, Reza Shah Pahlavi formally requested that foreign governments refer to the country as Iran, derived from an ancient term meaning land of the Aryans. He would also grant himself the title of Aryamir, light of the Aryans. This was not an arbitrary rebranding. It was a deliberate act of identity shaping in a time of global upheaval. Nationalisms were redefining borders and peoples everywhere. Iran's elites attempted to reach into the past and pull forward a version of history that would unite people under one banner. But Iran did not and could not mean only one ethnicity, nor did it ever. Today, Persians represent roughly half of the population. The rest is composed of Azerbaijanis, Kurds, Lurs, Baluchis, Arabs, Turkmen, and others, each with distinct languages, cultures, and histories. This is not debate, this is demographic reality. The name Iran was meant to encompass all those threats, yet for many in the diaspora, the deeper narrative still circles back to Persia. This was the land of poets and kings, as if the others were footnotes. The truth is, Iran was never a pure Persia, and trying to make it so in the imagination robs the nation of its depth.
In celebration of 2,500 years of nationhood, the Persian people, led by their Shah, His Imperial Majesty Mohammed Reza Pahlavi Aryamir Shah, make homage at the tomb of Cyrus the Great, the first Shah of all.
Why did this Persian-centric narrative flourish? A powerful answer lies not just in politics, but in the human psyche. Scholars of nationalism describe nations as imagined communities. Communities built not on lived familiarity between all members, but on shared symbols, stories, and myths that people carry in their minds. Benedict Anderson, one of the most influential thinkers on nationalism, wrote that nations are imagined communities. Imagined because the members of even the smallest nation will never know most of their fellow members, yet they believe themselves part of a single collective identity. This idea shows us that all nations are, in some sense, narratives, stories we tell ourselves about who we are, why we belong, and how we relate to others. But when a narrative places one subgroup at the center, especially by borrowing concepts of superiority from elsewhere, it can do more than unify. It can silence, exclude, and hierarchize. Reza Shah and his circle were influenced by European racial theories, especially German. that touted Aryan identity as superior, ideas which had taken root in Western thought. Iranian intellectuals, responding to the pressures of modernization, foreign interference, and a desire for strength and dignity, incorporated these ideas into state narratives. Thus was born a myth where Aryan heritage became not only a claim about ancient lineage, but a symbolic claim to centrality in the modern Iranian state. Now, what happens when a people are told a story of their own greatness? Identity psychologists warn us, narratives of superiority are psychologically attractive because they reduce uncertainty, they provide pride, and offer a sense of purpose. But they also tend to exaggerate in-group value while diminishing the worth of others. This is not unique to Iran. In social psychology, it is known that identity formation often involves in-group favoritism. People naturally favor their own group over others as a psychological strategy to build cohesion. But when this becomes attached to notions of inherent superiority, it morphs into a form of supremacy. This dynamic has been observed widely in studies across ethnic and racial identities. In the Iranian case, this took a specific shape. The official narrative held Persian language and culture as the vessel of civilization, while other languages and identities were placed at the margins. Scholars note that this state nationalism often acted to fold linguistic and cultural diversity into a single imagined identity, sidelining the lived realities of non-Persian groups. So when some in the diaspora assert Iran is Persia, they are repeating a narrative born of both pride and psychological defense, a creation of its time, not an undisturbed truth from ancient history.
Cyrus, King of Kings, champion, long before Magna Carta, of human rights and liberties. Cyrus, the Lord's anointed of the prophet Isaiah in the Old Testament. Cyrus, the founder of Persian culture and the father of Iran, the land, 5 times the size of Great Britain.
We now should look at the whole tapestry. Iran is not a museum piece. It is a living, breathing society with many ethnic and cultural streams. It's true, Persians do make up the majority of Iranians at 60% of the population. Yet some of its major components, each rich in their own right, are considerable minorities. The Azeris, the largest minority group at 15%, primarily in northwestern Iran, speaking a Turkish language with deep historical roots in the region. Their culture is Iranian in geography, but distinct in language and tradition. The Kurds at 10% are a people with their own language and centuries-long traditions, clustered mainly in the West, with vibrant folklore and socio-political aspirations of their own. Baluchis, Arabs, Turkmen, and Lurs in aggregate are around 15%. Each group brings a history and worldview woven into the Iranian fabric, but not subsumed by a single narrative. Rather than seeing these as lesser threads in a Persian tapestry, imagine them instead as colors in a great mural of a nation. Yet, sociologists and historians have pointed out that Iranian nationalism in the 20th century tended to present a single narrative, one that equated the state's identity with the dominant cultural norms, marginalizing the language and heritage of other groups. National identity should not be reduced to one cultural lineage, because that erases the presence and contributions of others. The challenge is to create an identity that doesn't depend on exclusion.
At this glorious moment in the history of Iran, I and all Iranians, the offspring of the empire which thou founded 2,500 years ago, bow our heads in reverence before thy tomb.
I really do appreciate you taking the time and watching the Kandidi Chronicles. Please do join our community by subscribing so that you don't miss out on any content regarding the Arab and Muslim history, identity, and modern condition. And if you really do enjoy the channel week in and week out and would like to support us even further, please do join us at our YouTube membership program as well as on Patreon. Thanks again. Across the diaspora, many Iranians carry the story of Persia not just as nostalgia, but as identity. Why? We can find 3 forces at work. The first is Romanticism. Persian civilization in antiquity, the poetry, miniature art, and epic narratives are stunning. They feel timeless and profound, like treasures worth preserving. Second is the disassociation from the Islamic Republic. When the current regime's ideals and policies alienate citizens, some respond by retreating into antiquity, as though ancient glories cleanse modern wounds. And finally, identity as escape. In exile, people build narratives that feel pure, untainted, ideal. But idealization carries risk. It can blind us to the real, lived pluralism of the homeland. In psychology, it's called identity idealization, a narrative that simplifies complexity into a comforting myth. It reduces cognitive dissonance, the mental tension between desired identity and uncomfortable reality, by privileging one ideal narrative over others. This serves comfort, but often at the cost of insight and empathy, and this is where the discourse gets fragile, when the desire for pride becomes a claim of primacy.
It had fallen to him, after a twilight in his nation's long history, to remind the world and his own people of Persian pride.
To understand this better, we borrow from research on social identity and group psychology. Social identity theory teaches us that humans form categories, we and they. This categorization helps build cohesion within groups. But such mechanisms also inflate in-group favoritism and diminish out-group standing when unchecked. Group pride becomes superiority, and superiority becomes hierarchical exclusion. And we see this clearly when the in-group during the age of the Shahs, the main fabric of Iranian diaspora today, are now the out-group. This pattern, celebrated at the level of narrative, echoes across contexts where mythologies of national primacy are intertwined with collective self-esteem. The danger isn't simply pride, it's when that pride refuses to recognize the equal dignity and presence of others. Applied here, the Persian-centric myth gives identity to some, but silences others. Not by design of those others, but by the force of the story itself. Let us imagine another Iran, when the diaspora and the current population of Iran meet again. Not a shrine to myth, not a monument to one past, but a living conversation between many traditions. Here's what this new narrative might look like. A nation where diversity is not a threat, but a strength. A society where Persian, Azeri, Kurdish, Baluchi, Arab voices all claim belonging. A culture that honors ancient legacies and contemporary pluralism alike. This vision resonates with scholars who argue that nationhood is not a fixed relic, but a dynamic project. Benedict Anderson again reminds us that national identity is constructed, adapted, and renewed, not discovered ready-made in dusty palaces. True unity does not come from erasing difference. It comes from weaving it into something larger than individuals alone. Unity is not sameness. Unity is not silence. Unity is not nostalgia dressed in pretense. Unity is agreement to coexist with dignity. Across Iran's long history, people have lived, traded, fought, intermarried, sung, and built together. This is reality, not myth. And it is from this reality that strength arises. A powerful Iran in the 21st century is one where all citizens see themselves reflected in the national narrative. No language is declared inferior, no heritage is denied. Every voice is welcomed in the chorus. As a final commentary on the mindset of the Persian diaspora, the light of dusk must fall on this tale. We see that Iran's true identity was never a monolith. It was always a tapestry. Each thread, ethnic, religious, and cultural, glows with its own hue. The brilliance of the whole depends on the whole itself, not on any one strand claiming dominance or supremacy. To the diaspora who long for home, do not carry myth as a talisman. Carry truth as a compass. Legacy is not only in the glories of kings, but legacy is in the voices of the many singing together, different yet united. This is the song of Iran, not Persia alone. Iran as it always was and could be again.